and I want to welcome. All right, everyone, good evening and welcome to Cosmic Conversations. I'm your host, Sheila Seppi, and tonight I am excited to introduce to you Chrystopher King. Now, Chrystopher is going to talk to us about what's called Cryonic Healing and Ascension Astrology. And so what he's going to do is he's going to take us on a deep dive into 5D astrology through the lens of ascension and spiritual awakening. So I cannot wait to get started with this. So Chrystopher, I want to go ahead and bring you up and welcome you to Cosmic Conversations. Hello.
Hello, Sheila. Thank you so much for having me, and it's an honor to be here. And thank you for everyone who's joined. My name is Chrystopher. I'm based out of just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. I am here at Stardust Retreat Center, which is the retreat center that I own about an hour outside of the Atlanta, Georgia general area. And there's a lot that I'm ready to talk about tonight.
Oh, I can't wait to hear it. But, I want to ask you just a few questions and then I'm going to turn it over to you. So, Chrystopher, can you start out by telling us just a little bit about yourself, your walk, and really how you came to be where you are today? And then
Yes.
just take it from there.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you. Um, so I have been um, in the entertainment world my entire life. From a very small child, I was an actor, singer, dancer. I went to a performing arts high school. I was admitted to Carnegie Mellon University for directing. So life was
Mm.
trying to go to in a different, or I was wanting life to go in a different direction. Underneath all of that, the entire time, the world of ghosts, paranormal, otherworldly beings, extra dimensional beings, all of those things existed within my family line and existed in my life as part of reality since I was a little kid. I did go through a period in my between like 17, 19 years old where I was a self-proclaimed atheist, and that was definitely part of my journey, but spirit did not let that happen for very long. And I'm also got into the corporate world and climbed the corporate ladder and was doing all the right things. And I mean, every step, every play I did, every song I made, every event that was successful in my career, there would be people who always said to me, we can see you being a spiritual teacher. That was said to me since I was a very young adult. And I think underneath of everything that I do here in the physical reality, there has been this healer, teacher, energy that has always been there, whether it was astrology. I mean, all the kids in my theater school were sick and tired of hearing about astrology, and this was before it was cool. Okay. This was back in the early 2000s, and it wasn't hip yet, all the things I was into. And even in the corporate world, I would drive my associates to sell more, but I would do it and teach them about the law of attraction, Abraham Hicks and Bashar, and in the
Mm.
ways that I could get it in there. I would hire people based off of their zodiac signs. So it was always there. Yeah, at 21 years old, I was having psilocybin mushroom parties, if you will. They weren't really parties, they were kind of channeling events in my apartments. We could have been drinking and smoking, but a lot of times we were um, laying out art supplies and had music soundscapes, and I would channel things. And this was happening in my early 20s. And still, I never let go. I don't understand why it took me so long to admit how magical and how powerful and how in tune I am with everything, and that this could be the direction that I went in. But there's a lot of preparation that life had me go through before I got to this point. Because some of us are quiet healers, others of us are entertainers. There are actors and singers that are quite literally healers. But I was being prepared up to this point in many ways to step into the archetype of Chiron and the healing shamanic energy that I hold and the medicine that I hold. But I had no idea that was happening most of the time because things also got very dark. So I have
Mm.
been through full spectrum of the human experience so far, and that's what's led me here from being a stage actor and bringing so much joy to people and loving to make people laugh, but also really teetering on the edge of the dark side in as many shamanic and healer energies do. As light workers, we're also shadow workers. So there's the human me, and then there's the star seed light worker uh, part of me. There's the false matrix part of me, and then there's the real divine matrix part of myself. And they are
Awesome.
still dancing together and interweaving together. But at one time, they were very separate. Now they're working their way into one organism in this lifetime.
That's awesome. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about the difference of the two, the false
Okay.
matrix
Yeah.
and the
So,
metaphysical?
yeah. So, in my opinion, and I'll always say things like this, in my opinion, or from what I have surmised, what I've received from my higher self and spirit, um, I don't like to say it is this because that's a false matrix programming,
Mhm.
because we're all creating our own matrix and our own reality. But there is one that we're all agreeing upon because it lives in our DNA, it lives in our bones. And there is a divine matrix. There is a version of Earth that was 5D, if we want to call it that, that unity consciousness for millions, billions of years. And then there is a version of this reality. So 3D represents a level of density that we're holding. But not only do we exist in the third dimension or in the third density, which is more, uh, is better put because it really describes the mechanism much better than dimension because it's not necessarily a place, it's a state of being and a frequency level. There is not only a third dimension available in the universe, there is, but there's also a copy of the third dimension, which we live in. So you can look at it as if like you downloaded the Sims computer game on your computer and someone came and copied it and put it on theirs. It is a clone of a density level that we don't have to belong in anymore. I believe everything happens for a reason. And I believe we can use everything to our benefit and transmute anything back into love and power. But there is a purposeful reality or virtual reality that was created for us and is kept in place by certain mechanisms in astrology as well that keeps us all creating a level of density and a type of disconnected level of density over and over and over and over again. It's much deeper than that, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. Okay. Well, awesome. So, tell us a little bit about the astrology aspect.
Yeah, so I have been interested in astrology since my friend's mother said, "Here's this book from the 70s." It was Parker's Complete Astrologer, and I still have it. And it was so heavy, so dense, and I was like, because I was so interested in it, she wanted me to have it. And so from that point forward, I have studied, I've trained with people, I've done thousands of readings up to this point, astrological analyses or psychic astrology readings. And somewhere along the way, there have been many different opinions, even some that I would have called a conspiracy theory at some point, which many conspiracy theories are true. That's a fine line to walk between mass hysteria and an undiscovered truth that's waiting for us to reveal itself to us. But in the astrology world, I did notice many things affecting me, but also it seemed to not correlate with the whole idea that we create our own reality and we create our own experience. And so I really um, have made it my passion to decode astrology and really receive astrological analyses, not just from what it says in that book, which is just a human's interpretation of that, but
Mm.
really to receive it from my higher self. Someone can have Pluto square the sun in their chart, and I can read it very differently than the next person because I'll tune to that specific combination of energies and intuitively and psychically receive how that's showing up for them specifically. But then it got deeper, and I am going to piss some people off. Okay. So we're just going to do this. And I just need everyone to hear me. I refused this for many years. It made me question myself as an astrologer until I realized that it did not have to be the end of astrology. It had to be the evolution or the ascension of astrology. But there is a metallic, hollow mind control mechanism that is orbiting in our atmosphere at all times. And it is completely hollow, and physics has known this for over 50 years. Um, NASA knows this, although we can't really trust anything NASA says. But there is an there is a there is an entity, I will call it that, in our night sky, and it's always been there for, some say, 100,000 years. I believe around 12,500 years ago, when we had the great cataclysm, this so-called moon was introduced into our orbit, but also into our consciousness as well. There are certain ways in which the false matrix program and the beings who are initiating and creating the false matrix program can use geometry, can use mass and organisms to siphon off or counteract a natural frequency. And so when I had to really come into the truth of some things that were happening, not just on this planet, but around this planet and in this solar system, I said astrology has to ascend. Just like we have Vedic astrology, Western astrology, this astrology, that astrology, shamanic astrology, which I really resonate with as well. I had to realize someone has to do it. And in astrology, there is an energy known as Chiron, which is the wounded healer. And Chiron lives between Saturn and Uranus. And we know Saturn is restriction, limitation, reality, the third dimension, time itself. Chronos, father time, is what Saturn is named after. He's the Lord of the Rings. He holds everything in place, but he also holds the matrix in place. And there's another planet which is flipped on its side and revolving in the opposite direction like a little revolutionary rebel, and that's Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius. So we're trying to move into this age of Aquarius, yet we're bound by this physical reality that we're in, which is full of limitation and restriction, which is everything that Saturn governs. And then there's a cute little asteroid sitting right between the two of them called Chiron. And Barbara Handclough wrote the book Chiron, the Rainbow Bridge. And so they call Chiron the Rainbow Bridge because he acts as a gatekeeper. He's known as the shaman. He's the wounded healer in traditional astrology, Chiron. But in my astrology, or 5D astrology, it's Chyron, because he's no longer the wounded healer. That's an old program. Now he's just the healer, the shaman, the alchemist, the rainbow bridge. And before you can get from those old patriarchal paradigms of Saturn, Lord of the Rings, into that age of Aquarius, that those new future timelines, those Uranian divine templates, you must heal yourself. There must be a transmuting of an inner alchemy has to happen. And in my chart, I have a placement called Chiron conjunct the ascendant. So those who are astrology aficionados, you'll understand any planet that is conjunct or joined up with your ascendant, you embody that archetype or those archetypes. And so Chiron and my rising sign are both at 25 degrees of Cancer. And so I have known for 15 years that I embody this Chiron archetype. I just had no idea what that was going to mean, and how much of a rainbow bridge I would actually become, and how much of a shaman healer and wounded healer I would have to become to get to that point. And so 5D astrology is an expression of harmonics, and it's really about bringing those opposite signs, Aries and Libra, I am, we are, together, bringing them together into one, and using things like the moon, which I consider the moon to be your false matrix program self. It is not your inner world. It's not your emotional reactions to things. It is your emotional reactions, but it's subconscious reactions you have towards something that keeps you in a binding loop and program. And people get very offended by this, and it's just because it's new, and it shakes the foundation of what you thought you knew. And just know that astrology up to this point hasn't been wrong. It was created, downloaded, and was facilitated by the false matrix program. All the astrology that we know up to this point came about after the great cataclysm and after the false matrix was implemented. So this doesn't mean anything's wrong. And why weren't they given the answers? Why did he get this answer and they didn't? Well, there are other people downloading this, not just myself. And it's time to start looking at your Gaia sign, for instance. My sun sign is 23 degrees of Gemini. My Gaia sign is exactly opposite of that at 23 degrees of Sagittarius. Your earth sign or your Gaia sign actually tells me more about your inner world, what you need and how you are at home, what your private life or inner life is like. And I believe Cancer is ruled by Mama Gaia. It is not ruled by the moon. So there are things like that that are different in my system, but generally the whole idea is to still master the program and the template similar to human design so that you can step into these archetypes that are more dense, that seem to play out within you, master them, and then become your own archetype, which is what I call the 13th sign
Mm.
or the 13th house, which is infinite potential, dark matter, uh, empty space. We're made of trillions of black holes. Every single one of your atoms in your body has a black hole inside of it. It's made of dark matter or empty space. So you quite literally are a portal to goddess or God itself. And so 5D astrology is about climbing that your way back to divinity and back to the center point instead of just being a regurgitation of different archetypes and it happening beyond your conscious control. I
Okay.
believe the subconscious should not be as vast as it is. We should be totally conscious and super conscious.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love hearing you talk about the false matrix. I don't hear a lot of people doing that. And in my memories and the teachings that I received is that, we started out with our organic matrix, and then
Yes.
through the division of the light and the darkness and blah, 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 when that false matrix came upon the planet, it was being beamed through piezoelectric forces from Saturn to
Uh-huh.
the moon
To the moon.
to the earth.
That's right.
And you're the only, I think, the third person that has also received that information. And the cool thing is, the more humanity begins to wake up, have you noticed that the rings around Saturn are starting to dissipate? They're getting weaker all the time. And I wonder if that's because we no longer are buying in to that programming.
Well, and the way you say that, for some people who are very analytical, they'll say that all sounds so like metaphorical, symbolic. Let's really bring it down to as above, so below. It's hermetic
Yes.
principles. You know, everyone keeps talking about the solar flares that are happening, and one of the main ones talking about it. I've talked about it for 3 years now, nonstop. Is ascension symptoms, descension symptoms, Schumann resonance, solar flare. Well, people think that they're responding to the Schumann resonance spikes and the solar flares,
Right.
which is true, but actually I believe the solar flares and the Schumann resonance spikes are happening because of us too. It is an infinity symbol. They're feeding into each other. And
Right.
so I believe that Saturn did not used to have rings and that the rings are made of sound waves, and these sound waves are being blasted to us and picked up by the moon, because the moon is made of neptunium, uranium, palladium. They've already discovered all this. When NASA so-called crashed into the moon. Let's just leave
Right.
that so called. They claimed that it rang like a bell, and it would, if it was completely hollow and metallic, ring like a bell for 8 hours or 30 minutes, depending on which time they're talking about. But I do believe that that is an amplifier, and I want you all to also think about, um, you know, there are forces that are trying to use the feminine energy to siphon us off as well. The moon being one of them. The moon, I tell people all the time, the moon is not your mother, the earth is. And it has always been that way. Where did this stepmother come from? Okay. This other mother that you all keep worshiping when you're standing on her and came from her. Right now there's a using that feminine energy to its advantage, when, if you ask me, it's just a big metallic ball full of reptiles, but we're not going to go there. um so, which
Maybe on a
sounds
different
really
show, maybe a
yeah,
different
maybe on a
one.
different show. That sounds really scary, but also the universe is so scary. Have you ever done psychedelics or gone really deep into meditation, or um, had a mind altering moment? The universe is full of magic, wonder, darkness, so much light. So we have to hold these things as possible. And I really think that our main goal here is to understand that these things are happening and understand how powerful we are, because we're so powerful that we can make the sun wake up. We think the sun's making us wake up. We're making it wake up back. Okay, it's reflecting us because we are divine creators. Yes, ants and slugs and deer and trees are all divine expressions, but we truly are divine creators, and that's why we have this level of consciousness in this way. So while we're talking about the false matrix, we also need to tell people how easy it is to get out of it
Mhm.
or to tap out of it. It is as simple as going, it's not real. And that seems too good to be true. But haven't you ever realized that once you realize, you can't unexpand a consciousness? Once you know something, you can't unknow it, which is why so many people you all are around right now are clinging not only to the media and the news and the third dimension with all of their might, but you've got spiritual people clinging only to the light and clinging to the false matrix programs that have taken over the spiritual world too.
Right.
I'm just like the global elite on this planet. I'm sure they're all looking around at each other like, we should make more tarot cards. They're really liking this. And so there are false matrix overlords also. That all sounds really scary and very Star Trek, and I want you all to know the universe is way cooler than Star Trek, but it is weird and can get very weird like that and can seem scary. But we're also living in a time where you can be living in a false matrix and realize it and start to deconstruct it with your consciousness by healing. But also, the healing only has to happen because those are all the implants and programs and things that have kept going throughout lifetimes that are keeping you in dense states. As soon as you pull yourself out of that and you release those things over time, you'll notice life can just melt in front of you. Things will manifest instantly. Conversations you had earlier will show up in a TV show that you just decided to watch right now, and you won't know which one came first because time is starting to melt right in front of you. Um, and it also is a time of individuation. This fifth dimension you all are talking about, this age of Aquarius, is all about individualism. That doesn't mean that there's homogenization. It Although we're moving into unity consciousness, we're not becoming one, as in not separate entities or separate organisms that have their own consciousness and focus. It's more so. So it's really crucial that you don't just listen to what Christopher says or what Sheila says. You really ask your higher self, is this right for me? Am I living in the reality where the moon is made of metal? Because obviously Christopher is, but maybe I don't have to agree on that either. It gets down to what feels best to you and where do you want your focus to be right now? Because if there are reptiles in the moon and the global elites emitting images and frequencies at you constantly to keep you in denser states, well, that sounds like a not so great world to live in. Okay. So we have to draw our focus away from certain things and really tune into, what do I really want out of my life? everyone needs to be living their bliss and their joy and their highest excitement, as Bashar would say. And I totally agree with that. So, but a lot of times for you to step out of something, you have to walk through a tunnel that isn't so pleasant. So walking through those tunnels sometimes looks as conspiracy theory rabbit holes, which many of them are true, many of them are embellished, but it's about discernment right now. And it's about knowing that if you start tuning into your heart and healing yourself, you'll naturally be pulled out of it. You won't even have to do anything. You'll see so clearly what's going on. And so the type of astrology that I work with is one that doesn't keep someone in a loop or in an archetype that doesn't work for them. It puts the power back in their hands and it helps them to master, where is this false matrix program showing up in me and how can I catch it when it's happening? Because
Mhm.
the only reason it has a hold on me is because I wasn't aware of it before and now I'm addicted to it. Now I've identified with this part of myself. And so it's about freedom and liberation and knowing that the reason that the false matrix creators have to work so hard to mind control us is because of how powerful we are.
Exactly. And, because we are co creators, when we wake up and realize that there is a false matrix and we choose to step into a different reality, that's when this manifestation begins to happen that you were
Yes,
talking about. And I think that's one way that people can really know that they're stepping out of that matrix. Um, so long those individuals who had lost their co-creative abilities had no choice but to place these matrices around us in
yes,
order to get us to create the world that they really wanted to create in the beginning, but they
that's
didn't
right.
have the power. But
That's
we
right.
do. And waking up to that fact and moving in a different direction, stepping into your co-creative abilities and your own personal power, we can change the world.
We are changing the world. It is
Yes.
happening. I mean, the sun, everything is divine timing. You know, we're causing the sun to wake up, but also it's time for the sun to wake up. The Mayans prophesized it thousands of years ago. So there's this kind of like, well, what came first? Cause and effect. Well, if you look in astrology, cause and effect is ruled by Saturn. So this idea that something has to happen first for something to happen after, that's linear time that only exists here, that doesn't exist in these higher frequencies, that doesn't happen, no pun intended, in those upper frequencies. Everything happens out of synchronicity. And life on this planet has operated that way for lifetimes and eons before all of this happened. And I do believe a lot of this was supposed to happen, but there are aspects of it that are unnecessary and don't need to continue anymore, like all the mind control and the using um, even the spiritual world as a way to draw your focus in and have you focus on things. It's like we all are creating a mass reality, but we all have our own individual reality that we're creating. And we've been cut off from our witch nature, from our priestess nature, from our shaman archetype. We've been so cut off from the natural flow of energy as it wanted to come here on this planet, um,
Mm.
that we don't trust ourselves. That we're like, don't tell us we create our own reality. We need God to do that. We need Abraham Hicks to do that. Somebody else do it, not me, because I can't possibly, because I'm so traumatized. I just noticed someone down here said Saturn's in my seventh house, and I'm like, I was born with Saturn in the seventh house, so I totally get it. And if you have astrology questions, throw them at me. But it's really important right now to understand that in astrology, we associate the father with Saturn and the mother with the moon. And I want to take that back. I want to give it to Earth and the sun. Those are the two energies. And it is said that Saturn used to be our sun and that there were no rings and that it emitted light and it was considered to be the sun before the sun as we know it, or the original sun. So there's a lot that has happened in this solar system over the last trillion years that we have only scratched the surface of.
I have a question. talking about the moon and the sun, etc. Today is supposed to be, I think it's today. Yeah, today is the super
Oh, it
blue
was last night. Yeah,
last
exactly
night.
24 hours ago. Yeah,
Yeah. So we're kind
9:35.
of we're kind of moving still within that energy. And I wanted to ask you, um, what are your thoughts about the supermoons and how they affect people? I know for women, some of my shamanic teachings were the day after the blue moon or the day after a full moon, which is now, women are basking in that energy, because that brings us into more of the personal power, supposedly. So I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I disagree, and I will tell you all, I have Cancer rising. So my original astrology teacher years ago told me, "You are a child of the moon. Cancer is ruled by the moon, and Cancer rising natives are the most affected by moon phases." And I assigned myself to that immediately and knew, because when I started working at 16 years old, I would have a bad day at work, or really upset, and I would leave to be picked up, or to, when I had a car, to drive home, and I would look up and there would be a full moon. I always noticed that I would have an extremely intense emotional experience, usually negative, and there would be a full moon in the sky. And I even went to my mother as a teenager and was like, "I'm noticing this. Do you think it's possible that the moon could actually have an effect on us? Because I am noticing this so much that something's trying to get my attention." And so for years, I've used the moon as an example to substantiate and prove astrology. And I still do. There is something happening at that moment, but I never ever felt wonderful around a full moon. I could somewhat ignore it, but it always gave me insomnia, anxiety, restlessness, lighter sleep. And of course, it does. Science knows that it does that, because a full moon, especially, will drop your melatonin levels and raise your serotonin levels. And then, not to mention the parasites that live in all of us. Most people have parasites in their body. And those parasites actually feed off of the extra serotonin around the full moon, which is very poetic, as all of this is. It's all very symbolic. It's like the parasites in your body feed off of the full moon, just as the parasites in the moon feed off of our energy during. So all this sounds really nuts, and that's why for years I pushed it away and pushed it away, and then I just had to accept a lot of these things. Now, I believe that you could you could gather your energy, whether it's a full moon or it's next Thursday. If you intentionalize your energy and you believe there's something powerful happening, there will be. And I
Sure.
believe doing ceremonies and rituals, and I used to do cacao ceremonies every single full moon. Nothing bad happened. Everybody's okay. Okay. But I do believe that there are energies that are heightened at that point that are not as connective, and it specifically is causing a separation, if you will, because think about it. The sun is our creator. It's our highest self. Even in astrology, the sun is the higher self. It's not just the ego, it's the awareness of self. It's our whole collective higher self in this solar system. And the moon actually cuts us off from that. It siphons off that energy, and the sun emits a frequency that the moon actually emits another frequency that counteracts that frequency. So it is cutting you off literally from light codes that would have been available to you universally and nonstop. It's hard to explain to people about this sometimes because of how connected they feel with the moon. And I just tell people that's because of how connected you are with this false matrix program, and that everything that we know about spirituality and shamanic work has really come about in the last 10,000 years after the introduction of the moon. So, what was life like in Lemuria and Atlantis and these ancient civilizations? Because if you look at many texts, many drawings on the inside of walls, many ancient teachings that go back uh, even 7 or 8,000 years ago, they refer to this time before the moon. the time before the moon arrived. And there's actually words for that in different indigenous languages, which translate to the time before the moon. And we notice what the moon does to our tides. So imagine what it would have done to the whole planet once it was suddenly introduced. There would have been a mass flood, and this would have happened around 12,500 years ago. And this is part of understanding. This helps you to understand how they're keeping us in these loops and these programs, because they're using your energy bodies, your emotional bodies, and they're also using, for you ladies, your divine sexual and hormonal energies as well, which is why that's so linked up with the moon. In this incarnation, I am male and female in one person, but my physical body is not female, so I can't speak on certain things. But I definitely would not like to have to go through something every single month. And I already do, being Cancer rising. I remember my astrologer telling me a long time ago, she's like, Cancer rising men have men periods. And I was just like, tell me about it. Every single month around the full moon. But it even got to the point where it was like the first quarter, the fourth quarter, the new moon. It always caused some kind of disturbance, even if I didn't pay any attention to it. So I have come to understand certain things. And whether that is, someone says all men have periods. Yes, we do. Um, but this is not about, is it right? Is it wrong? If it still feels right for you, I think it's totally possible and will give you that you're so powerful that you could blast the moon with love and transition into a parallel reality where the moon is not insidious or have a negative effect. I cannot say that that's not possible. So that's why I'm very careful with what I share, because I really want us all to be choosing things that feel right for us, not that which causes us anxiety, pain, or getting in our head more. That's the fourth dimension. Once you get in your head and you start going, well, is it not? Is it right? Is it wrong? You're in the fourth dimension. You're not in the fifth dimension, which is the heart, unity consciousness. Whatever's right for me is coming to me. I'm receiving it, full synchronicity. The fourth dimension is where all the most insidious programs are happening. So it's quite a leap we're taking, not only out of the third into the fifth, but out of a false matrix third into a third into a fifth. I mean,
Right.
no wonder so many people are quote unquote losing it. You know, it's we have to lose our mind to create a new one, but many people right now are experiencing spiritual warfare within themselves, battling dark energies within themselves, other lives that are coming up to be rectified suddenly within them. I mean, this is a extremely complex multidimensional ascension process that we're in right now, and the entire universe is gathering around and watching and going, wow, never has there ever been something like this that has happened in any corner of this universe. So while you all are at home and not being able to sleep and going, should I book an Ascension and Awakening coaching session, or excuse me, Ascension and Awakening coaching session with Christopher? Well, before you do that and think that you need help and that you're going crazy, just realize, like, I think this is supposed to be the big deal that has been prophesized for thousands of years. And I think I'm living it. And I've got a phone and I've got electricity and I've got Starbucks to make me think that everything is still the same and that it's me that's going crazy, not the world out here. That's part of the program.
Thank you so much for that. Now, if people do want to get a hold of you and they would like to book a session, can you tell them how to do so?
Yes, my website name will be changing soon to ChristopherKing.com, but it is still the old name. It's not old, but the previous name, theastromedium.com, astromedium.com. And you can also follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube at Christopher King, and those are with a Y. I use a Y instead of an I for a reason. And so it's Christopher King. And then my website is still theastromedium.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And what I'd like to do now is open up for questions. If anyone has any questions or comments, but I do want to start off with one that Bridget has. She says the moon has been adjusting. This occurred February 2023. It's now connected to the infinite well of crystalline diamond rainbow light of source and emanates these high frequencies. What are your thought processes on that?
I am going to pull that reality into mine and make that even more real.
Beautiful, wonderful. All right. And I do want to just mention that Bridget is our wonderful, wonderful, wonderful host of Awake and Ascending on Clubhouse. She's here every Thursday. So hopefully, Bridget, some of the audience that you may have some questions for Chrystopher, but I'm going to redirect back to our audience here in our Zoom land. And let's see, does anyone have any questions? Raise your hand or just kind of come off mute and let me know. Okay, I'll go right back to the questions here. Julia said, would Saturn in the 12th house, Quinn something. Yes, thank you, son. And you can tell I am not an astrologer. A sun in the 5th trine, midheaven Aries, be the finger of God, all are around the 23rd or 26th degrees. I hope you guys understand that because I did not. I am no astrologer.
So you're referring to a yod, Julia, and so Saturn is quincunxing the sun, and is Saturn, I think we're missing something here. Where's the other quincunx? A finger of God or a yod would be 2 quincunxes and 1 sextile. So give
I'm
me.
trying. It would be the moon.
Oh, okay. So you've got Saturn in the moon sextiling or Sun in the moon sextiling?
Sun. The sun is sextiling each of those planets. The sextiling. It's Cancer, or it's Saturn and the moon are sextiling.
I talked to him on the way home.
Yeah, so Saturn and the moon are sextiling, and they are both sending a quincunx to the sun, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, so that is a finger of God, and this is and is your rising sign Cancer?
No, Leo.
Leo, okay. So you're toward the beginning of Leo, I'm guessing?
Yeah.
So this yod actually is about this is a perfect yod to bring up because this truly is, with the moon involved, tapping out of false matrix programs, trusting your intuition, but also there has been a siphoning off of your intuition and your psychic abilities in this lifetime. And this would have caused a lot of feeling like I'm going crazy in this lifetime or not trusting yourself. And there does seem to be a like Saturn in the 12th house, talk about being in an insane asylum. This matrix, this world that we're in, has been very heavy for you. And you're meant to be seen with that Leo rising and meant to be out in the world. I have midheaven and Aries as well. And we are supposed to be out there, but things have been really dense for you in this lifetime. And now is time to kind of take that back, knowing this. But also Saturn being in Pisces right now is going to activate your Saturn in the 12th house. So there is an ending happening for you when it comes to a program that you've been in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just I have lots of confidence now, and so I speak up and say things. I thought it was just because I was getting older. I'm 77, planning to live to 120. So I
am holding that for you, just like I'm holding this diamond rainbow crystal light for the moon. We're going to hold this in place. You all, there have been people who've told me the moon's been adjusted and corrected. And I'm like, well, that's convenient. And I'm like, okay, well, that sounds great. What about all of us who were born before the moon was adjusted, right? And the kind of programs that are really embedded in us now, because every single thing I share on social media, someone gets on there and goes, the Galactic Federation has already taken care of that. And I'm just
No,
like, oh, okay, well, my higher self didn't give me that message, but is it possible that in their reality they did? Yes. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll choose a little bit of that instead of they're wrong or he's
Right.
wrong, because that
Exactly.
is duality and that's third dimension. Someone says, I have Chiron at 1 degrees Sagittarius. Tell me what this means. Oh, Chiron in Sagittarius at 1 degrees. The house also
Yeah.
matters, but generally your wound is to your belief systems and feeling trapped in this lifetime. But we definitely have had a lot of issues with religion, feeling like you don't know what to believe in. And part of your healing is knowing that every religion on this planet leads back to the same things. All roads lead to Rome, no pun intended, when we're talking about Sagittarius, and that you truly are the priest, the preacher, the pastor, the um, you are the spiritual guru, and that it's always been you. That's basically what that means, but it has a lot to do with there could be some religious trauma there too with Chiron and Sagittarius. Do you want me to just keep reading these, or are
Sure.
there
I mean,
people who
it's,
someone raised their hand earlier, but I couldn't.
I think they must have put it down. I think everyone
I think
now
it was
is
Jenny E.
responding through the text.
Yeah, Jenny, do you have a question before I go on to these other?
I do.
Yeah.
Hi, Sheila.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I don't mean to rudely jump in. I just can't find my raise hand thing for some reason on my Zoom. It used to be there. This is a more general question, and it's about the
Yeah.
false matrix. It's regarding what, if any, difference is there? So my understanding and a general understanding is we're here to have a duality experience, and that duality experience is changing, and we're evolving towards a more unity consciousness. So we're not in the good, bad, light, dark, evil. So all the things we talk about in the Ascension, those things have to come up and heal and transmute. But what is the difference when we talk about the false matrix? If we're in 3D in order to realize that we're spirit and get out of that, then what is all this other stuff within the false matrix? Was that something that came later? Was that something that came, from whatever entities that came along and then, effed with it, messed around with the whole thing in order to keep us in it? Is that the difference?
So, how I've come to know it to be and what feels right to me is that a long time ago, a matrix, the third dimension has always existed, just as 900.5 FM will always exist. It's a density level. It's always there and available, whether it's being filled up with song or it's static or not. The false matrix was actually it was created as a matrix program to create because there are beings that have come here that have done wonderful things, like create new realities. That is quite literally them creating a new reality. But then there were these other beings that are kind of scaly and have weird eyes, and they came here from another dimension and were wreaking havoc. And so to contain them and control them, they created a false matrix that could not be tapped out of, which entrapped them in it, but also entrapped us in it as well. Because you might think, well, that's horrible. Why would they do that? Well, for the greater good of the rest of the whole universe, because these beings are so destructive. And not all of them, but many of them are. And the technology they had and the things they were able to do with it. So the false matrix is different because it is designed, it's a much denser state and it's much more controllable. There is a third dimensional reality where darkness and light exist, where it's not as dense and doesn't loop as much. Evolution or spiritual expansion would have already happened by now. in
Wow.
that, because we would have used that duality to bring back to center. But in the false matrix, it's just a ping pong match that never ends, if you haven't noticed.
And when did that when was that, you had mentioned, I think earlier, when did that false matrix get interwoven in this? So there's the 3D and then there's the false matrix interwoven with the 3D in which we are in, correct? Is that what you're saying?
Well, maybe you are. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But all of us are kind
Oh,
of
I am. No.
dancing in it. Well, we all still have
I'm just
pieces of
joking.
it there, you know, and we're on here talking about this false matrix, and there are people around here who don't know anything about any of this, who are like, I love this planet, I love my life, I love Starbucks. I don't know what you all are talking about. And I
Right.
wish I could be them. But there
Yep.
is when you want a timeline for something, will you be more specific? Like, are you wanting to know when the false matrix itself was
Yes.
initiated?
Yes.
It started about 20,000 years ago, and around 14,000 years ago, it was implemented, if you will, and somewhere along the way, it was taken over and used for what we would call the global elites agenda, reptilian agenda, things like that. Things I used to think were just nuts. I was never going to be one of those people that thought these things. But this was quite a long project. This was actually something that was meant for good, what we would call good, just because we liked it. You know, what we think is good and bad is usually just our nervous system and our nerve endings in our body, either liking something or not. We're not the end all be all in the universe on what is good and bad, but we would have enjoyed that. I mean, think about it. This false matrix or copy of a matrix. I mean, if you are able to draw this incredible portrait on your iPad and you're able to just copy it, put it on someone else's, that's pretty cool. Why can't the universe do that too? And why does that have to be a bad thing? It's just, it has kind of turned into a painting that we're all trapped in, thinking that it's real, when there's an even more real expression happening. And this false matrix is really kept in place by the looping, by the using the trauma and the emotions and the subconscious mind and implanting things in there. I mean, haven't you all ever wondered, what is this subconscious? Why is it not conscious to us? And why aren't we in control of it? And why in astrology does the moon rule the subconscious? Hope
Interesting.
that answered your question.
Interesting.
I just have a zillion questions, but I see other people do too. And I've just loved listening to you tonight. It's just it's been fantastic.
Thank you so much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
that.
Okay.
Does anyone
so
else have questions?
We do. We have Solar Rays and we also have Bridget, but Solar, let's go ahead to you first, honey.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for taking my call. Thank you for our guest, our presenter. How's everybody doing? I have a question that I typed out, and I was just wondering if you had heard anything about that and how it affects our moon cycles. Now, there are some that, teachers that speak about the moon being an artificial item that was pulled into place. I'm sure, many of people might have heard these stories, and that it's been used as a place where the ETs could actually use it as a base to run some of their soul recycling karma machines. And so, with that kind of narrative out there, if you've heard of it, I'd love to get your thoughts. How does that affect us using the moon and its moon cycles, its effects, and all of that, besides its magnetic connection to Earth? I just wanted your thoughts on that. And then I have one quick second question is, do you work with the sidereal charts at all, or are you mostly working with the tropical astrological chart? And why did you choose to use which one you use? Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll start with that one. I have worked with sidereal, and because I was born, astrology has come about in many ways and has evolved in many ways over time. And many would argue that the sidereal or Vedic charts are more, quote unquote, accurate because they are basing their um, the energy of the sign as coming from the constellation that it's emitted from. And while I considered that for a long time and really tried to tune to that, my tropical or Western chart was always just more in alignment with me. It was much more spot on, as they say. And so I went based off what felt right for me, but also I do believe that the signs, the energy of the signs don't necessarily, there are definitely energies coming from those stars. Okay, fixed stars in astrology have an energy. And you know, just as we crossed the Lionsgate portal, which is the sun aligning with Sirius, there is an alignment there. There's an energy happening there. But I do not believe the 12 archetypes come from the constellations across the ecliptic. I believe that was a physical representation, and they found the energies within those constellations as a placeholder, if you will. I believe that there is a band of energy, and that the 12 astrological signs as we know them to be live within all of us and belong in the archetypal realm. And so they don't necessarily just come from there, in my opinion. Although I believe that you can take your sidereal chart and your Western chart and overlay them and see a much more multidimensional expression of yourself. It's not either or, it's yes and. And I also, to your first question, I've talked a lot about this with certain spiritual teachers and people that I know, and that I hold very dear and close to me when it comes to, especially people who are birth doulas or um, shamans who work specifically with feminine energies and goddess energies, and how the moon. I mean, I've been told many times that this cycle, this experience that you all have every month is not supposed to be happening every month. It would have happened at a different schedule, or it would have been intuitive. It would have come on creatively. It wouldn't be on this clockwork cycle that we're on. Also, in my astrology, you know, just like Metatron's cube, there are 13 signs and 13 houses, and that has nothing to do with Vedic astrology. I'm not talking about the constellation that sits next to Scorpio on the ecliptic, causing 13 constellations to be there. I'm not talking about that. There are 12 archetypal energies, but I was always told 12 is the number of creation, and I don't believe that. I think 13 is the number of creation because it takes us back to that triad, that third energy, and it's a step above. You know, there's something more. There's that central point, that nucleus within the atomic structure that we're talking about, which I call the 13th house, which we all have in our 5D astrology chart. And I really think that there's something there's like a ritual, just like in the Catholic religion, no offense, but in the Catholicism, there is this eating of the body of Christ, drinking of the blood of Christ. There's, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, the global elite and powers that be have tried to cut us off from the second dimension, the Tellurian realm, the crystalline structures, and it's really cutting us off from our own body. But ritualizing things like that often creates an energy field and a point of focus. And I think a lot of that has been um, bastardized. It has been taken over in certain ways. And so I think that there are many aspects of us that are very connected to the moon, and it's not necessary. It wasn't always that way, is my belief, and I hope that answers your question.
Awesome.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Hey, Bridget.
I've seen that picture
Hello.
before. Hi, Bridget.
Hello.
Hi, honey. How are you?
Super good. Really, really amazing. So we have two things. First, Coventina says, wow, Chrystopher, love and feel your words.
Oh,
And
thank you.
there's lots of things going on in the chat here. But then Yash asks, what steps do we take to head towards fifth dimension?
Oh gosh, there's going to be a whole laundry list, and that is everything to do with the heart. So just remember
Yeah.
that The heart chakra, this all sounds, again, very cliche, very metaphorical, but we're living in a simulated reality within a simulated reality. We're living in a story. It's a never-ending story. If you've never seen that children's movie from the 80s, go watch it, because we are living in our own story that we're creating. And I've known this since I was a little kid, and I didn't know what that was. Ooh, don't touch me. Don't do that. Sorry, you all. Where was I? Gosh, I don't like when they actually touch me. Get me back on track. I'm so sorry. Never ending story. Come on, help me.
I can't because I lost my
Somebody.
train of thought.
Well,
I did
Also,
some energy just came into our space right now, and just that used to happen when it was time to do the Long Island medium thing at Whole Foods. It suddenly my mind would just drop like that, and I wouldn't know what I was saying next. And it's like, yes, we are in a story,
Fifth energy heart space,
Oh,
Nicole
yes.
says.
Yes. So we've also got energies here that are very powerful, that are coming into the space with us. Actually, angelic energy, I just heard. So when you are, and of course you all would come, I understand. So when you open your heart, and it all sounds very cliche, but the heart chakra actually vibrates at the frequency of the fifth dimension. It is the gateway to the fifth dimension. So I'm a Chyronic healer, so I do a lot of work on the heart. I also work with plant medicine, and I hold 13 different medicines in my profile. Many of them specifically are heart openers. If you all have never worked with ceremonial grade cacao or the spirit of Mama Cacao, you don't have to drink cacao to access the mothering spirit in there. Mama Cacao, sassafras, medicines like MDMA, any of the plant medicines have a heart opening effect. Anything that will help to heal all of the bandwidth, heart math, heart brain coherence issues that are happening. Your heart and your brain should be synchronized and should be running as one. Your heart field is so much bigger than your brain field. And the fifth dimension, people think, well, there's got to be more crystals, there's got to be more sage, there's got to be more galactic federation or spaceships. Mary came to me last year at the beginning of 2022 after she came through in a reading for someone. And then she came to me again while I was in the shower. And I was like, okay, I guess we're doing this now. And she said, the doorway to the fifth dimension is not, okay. She said, the doorway to the fifth dimension is not through the spaceships. It's not through the portals. It's not through the galactic center. It's in the leaves. It's in the ants and their ant hills. It's in the squirrels. It's in the deer. It's in the way the waves crash. She said, the fifth dimension is already here. It has always already been here. It is within you. And that sounds cliche again, but truly the fifth dimension is just letting your heart take over and seeing the world through the eyes of unconditional love and unity. It may take us a bit to get there, but that utopia, that Garden of Eden that we are climbing our way back into is our divine right. And so anything that brings you joy, the same thing we've been saying, every tarot card spread you all keep getting, it all keeps telling you to follow your passion, do what you love, heal your heart. It's really about healing your heart, because when you heal your heart is what's emanating all these frequencies that your brain is picking up and turning into loops and programs and turning into ideas and constructs. When you come back into the heart, you're more in a feeling space of unity. And if you've never worked with psychedelics or plant medicine, that is a perfect way to instantly know what I'm talking about, because you can get there through breath work and many other ways of being, but especially working with these sacred plants and their plant spirit energies. You access certain parts of yourself that I'm talking about that you can actually feel for the first time. Most of the people I work with will feel something that they've never felt, or that they only heard people talking about feeling, but they actually had the experience of it. And once you get a taste of that, you cannot unexpand that. So healing your trauma, but really healing your heart, is the way into the fifth dimension. It's so easy. People think, what portal do I need to walk into? What Lemurian underground city do I need to escape to? And I'm like, no, you need to bring that incredible magic up to the surface and make it happen here. And you do that by cleaning off the glass on your glasses, by not seeing the distortions any longer and seeing with clarity. Another medicine, if you all are being called to it, is Wachuma, the grandfather, the sacred cactus, total clarifier. You will see everything through the eyes of the heart, and everything will be made clear. And that is the fifth dimension right there. My retreats are the fifth dimension. The CE5 groups you all are getting into, that's the fifth dimension. You all are creating little pockets of it every time you all are gathering in groups. And it's not as hard as we think.
Beautiful.
He says he understands. That makes sense. It's already here. Yes. Sheila, I have 3 more questions that have arose, but do you want to go to Julia first? Because I think there's someone else with their hand up.
Okay, Julia, do you want to go ahead and ask your question? Then we'll go back to Bridget with the Awaken Ascending crew.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, because I am so triggered every time we talk about a change that happened, and you said 20,000 years ago, and I believe that might have been about the time that Lemurian and Atlantis were trying to figure out what to do with this
I didn't even think about that.
collaboration. And I am always pulled to it because I feel the Lemurians in the light body were working together with the Atlanteans through the crystals, trying to do this adjustment in the right way, and something went wrong. And I'm here now to try to figure out how to make it right. And all that you're saying is right in line with what I've always had a sense of, but no way to express it.
Yes, and I just had a retreat for a special group in Sedona in June, and I have one coming up in November in Mount Shasta. And I didn't know what Spirit was doing 6 months ago when they sent me on this trek. We're going to be going to Egypt. We're going to be going to Peru. And yes, we're working with sacred medicines, shamanic medicine. We're bringing all of our magic to the experience. But there is a reawakening of portals. There is a grid work, and they showed me the grid work happening. They actually took me to Sedona last year with someone who taught me how to do grid work, because I already knew it, but sometimes you just have to be shown the scales on the piano, and then you can just start playing it yourself. It's a remembrance. So many of you did exist in the Lemurian and Atlantean times, and not only did you exist, but it's still happening now. That other life that you lived is still happening now, and it's sending you feedback right now. And it's not necessarily telling you to get something right. That Spirit does want me to tell us, we're not here to get it right. We're here to
understand it
in a whole new way. It wasn't that they did anything wrong. It wasn't that anything wrong has happened up to this point. It was supposed to happen this way because actually what I'm being shown is at that time when those things happened, we were also, if you're familiar with the Yuga cycles in the Vedic texts, like the Kali Yuga or Theta Yuga and things like that. It's natural cycles that we go through that are different lengths of time, like in the Mayan calendar. We were actually in a time where energy would kind of densify or go down, or we were moving from a silver age to a bronze age, or a bronze age to an iron age, if you will. Like currently right now in the Kali, we're in the Kali Yuga, which is an iron age, but we're moving toward the bronze age. So you can feel in every single, the Mayans, the Vedic traditions, the Native Americans, they all talk about now we're on the upswing of this. So there should be a natural creation and destruction that happens. But I also believe that the beings on this planet were getting too powerful for their own good, and not for our own good, but to other beings. Human beings actually are some of the most powerful in the entire universe. And I'm not just saying that because I've got human in me, because I've also got Pleiadian and Andromedan and reptilian and all kinds of stuff in me, okay? And unicorn, we have so many different archetypes and different lives that we've lived. But I do take a lot of pride in how powerful we are. And because look how much they had to do to control us. So know that Atlantis and Lemuria right now, they've been on the rise, but what they were doing with energy and consciousness and crystalline structures, and I'm also seeing the way they were living with animals. I'm not really sure what that means, but the way they were living with nature and the animal beings on this planet is
Yeah,
trying to
I
be
was living
restored.
with the tortoises.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, it's just a
Yeah, see, I
beautiful
don't even
family.
know some
Yes,
of these
yes,
things. Like
yes,
I'm
it was
receiving them
wonderful.
now, but
Yeah,
there's
I love it. Thank you.
I
You
think they're trying
brought me
to
peace.
um validate that for you, because the last thing we need, look, here's the thing, you all, let's say we're all making this up. Let's say Sheila's crazy, Christopher's crazy. We're all getting together and wasting our time talking about all this spiritual stuff when we should be worried about COVID still. Let's say that's true. I'm telling you, quantum physics has already proven that we create our own reality by what we're looking at and where we place our attention and what we believe about it. Let's all believe in unicorns and rainbows and Atlanteans and Lemurians. Let's create a crystalline paradise on this planet. I dare you.
Challenge accepted.
Period.
I knew you would do that, Bridget.
I know you knew.
Yeah. All right, honey, you have another question. Thanks, Julia. That was awesome. Thank you.
I have 4 now.
Oh, man. Okay.
So let's go with Moon Tribe. She wants to know, what does it mean if your rising sign is opposite your sun sign? She said, not a very interesting
Ooh.
question, but curious if no one
Yeah.
else has one.
Well, I love this question. What that means is that you are here to be, not all of you, but a lot of you very much identify with being of service, okay? You hold a lot of Virgo and Libra energy within you, and you often don't feel seen by yourself. You really feel seen through the other person, and that's not a bad thing. Through the service you offer them, through the mirror they offer you, through the mirror you offer them. Relationships are a big focus for you in this lifetime. That's what that represents. And more so than just anyone, it helps you to anchor into who you are. And if others see, we think I should see my light first so others can see it. Well, a sun on the descendant may not see it until the other person does, but also that is still source viewing itself through another perspective. There's no wrong way about that. And so just know that relationships being of service, and um, also being a harmonizer of energies too. You came here to, depending on what sign it's in also, but you really came here to give a lot of your energy to the harmonizing the health and the well-being of other people. And that's a healer placement, in my opinion. Someone who can put their ego aside for others.
Beautiful. She says, thank you.
Welcome.
Let's go. Yash has already asked one, so I'm going to get the other 2 and circle back if we have time. The Hippocrene asks, what do meteor showers signify in astrology in a natal chart?
See, that's okay. I'll just tell you what I get because I'm not as familiar with that. Um, okay, what they're showing me is like if you're looking at your chart in such a multidimensional way, because including meteor showers is a level of astrology that many people are not ready for. But what they're showing me is you're someone who over many different lifetimes even have come here over many different lifetimes from other placements. That is a star seed energy I'm hearing. And also there have been many times, okay, I don't know if you're familiar with what the term walk-in is. There are different versions of a walk-in, but there are you have had other energies join up with your consciousness in this lifetime, like other soul energies coming in. And that's why there may have been a few identity crises or some really life altering experiences that happened. But there have been many times in your life where something has dropped, you're a channel as well. This is signifying, I'm not sure if this is related exactly to the meteor shower, but you have channeling abilities that are above the average, let's just say that. And that there are, I'm going to call them imaginary friends, or almost like spirit guides that are with you, that are more wanting to channel through you than other people have. That's
I
what
would
I'm getting
say
about that.
you're pinging Martin really well.
Okay.
It's very multidimensional. In fact, his next comment on the chat was, I was a demi of Poseidon in Atlantis, so connected with the sea and its beings. So if you can get the vibe of what they were bringing through for him, that's amazing. So grateful.
Sure. Yeah.
Summer Spirit asks, what happens when the brain field grows or is bigger than the heart field, if possible, and how to balance that out? Or is it an absolute that the heart field is always greater than the mind field?
That's right. The field is always bigger. How much of your energy is filling it up is what can change or be variable. The heart field is always bigger.
Beautiful. I'm going to circle back to Yash, and then I think we will be complete as soon as I find it. There it is. So Sheila, so I can see these in the chat. Aside from all the comments, you're going to love this. They do the little alien emoji before it, and it makes my heart so happy to see those little bitty gray faces all up and down the chat. So Yash asks, how does karma play a role in all of this, or is it a trap?
I believe that karma is a trap. I do not believe that the source itself, with as much magnitude and wisdom and power, would say that, well, you did that, so you have to come back and do that again. That feels dense. And it's not that it's not available within source. Obviously it is. But I do believe, because Saturn is known as the Lord of Karma. And I believe that the north and south nodes in astrology represent, because after all, the north and the south node are Rahu and Ketu are depicted as the dragon eating its own tail, or the serpent eating its own tail. Either one, it's a reptile. So I believe that it is people say, well, you have North Node in Capricorn. That means you have South Node in Cancer. That means in other lives you experienced Cancerian energies, and in this one you're here to experience Capricorn energies, and that's my North and South Node. And I just think that time isn't linear, so it's all happening at once anyway, and that it's keeping you in a process of duality in and of itself. And I believe karma is a program, because there are many different parts of us. There's the monad, the soul, the oversoul, the higher self, the etheric body, the astral body, I mean, there's many different versions of us that make us who we are, like a leaf on a branch of an even bigger branch. And I think that there are parts of us, parts of the soul energy, the astral body, the etheric body, that if we believe in hell and heaven, we will experience a version of that when we die. And then if we believe that we must come back based on something we did, some kind of trauma program or looping program, there is this kind of need to come back. And I do believe there's a version of the soul that exists outside of all that, that is not participating in that, but is letting it happen, just as your higher self lets you text him back and take a right when he told you to take a left. I'm talking to myself. But there are versions of us that are connected, but leave the other version of itself to its own free will. And I think on some level we have signed up for all of this to happen. Simply, source loves to forget itself so it can remember itself again. It's kind of like putting on a tight pair of shoes just to feel the relief of taking it off. Well, relief is a really interesting experience to have. To me, it's unnecessary. Let's just leave the shoes off. But all of it's welcome. There's no right or wrong within the source created experience, and within all that is, it's all welcome and it all wants to happen. Even the really dark, icky stuff, there's a part of it that just has to be there. There are universes in decay, there are universes in great expansion, and we're in that one.
Oh, I love that. And I just want to take a second to affirm. I've been communicating since birth with a variety of beings. And in my early 20s, my angelic took me on a walk in the blue-gray world, what most people call the other side, and explained to me, and they've since brought through even more information, but they essentially explained to me that it's just a furthering of the human experience, as are most heaven and hell experiences as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
And that if we don't want to experience the furthering of another human experience, the one that we're in, but in a very different way, that we just hold zero resistance and attachment to the things, let go of the guilt and the shame and things like that,
So
and
hard to
move
do.
ourselves into freedom within our own
Yes.
consciousness. Therefore, we're not holding ourselves in further bondage,
That's
which is
right.
usually what the blue-gray world is. It's not always,
Yeah.
but and I will say, if anyone's thinking about doing that, please don't go by yourself. They will siphon. So I was very shielded during that, well, a couple of walks, but yes. So love that. That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that,
And
Chrystopher.
thank you for sharing as well. That was beautiful. Yeah. And I know we have to keep going on to other questions. I could
Yeah.
go on that forever.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Bridget. We have one last question. Kale, you have your hand up?
Oh, you're still on mute.
Yes, you're on mute, honey.
I love when I do that. I was just curious to get a reading if possible.
What kind of reading would you like?
Just I'm Taurus with
Well, I'll
what am
tell
I-
you what's coming. If you want me to talk about astrology, I can, but I can tell you what's coming through intuitively.
yeah, what are they telling you?
That something is wanting to happen to your job, your career. Something is happening in your career life and it's wanting to change. And they're really taking me to your heart space as well. I don't know if you ever feel like anxiety in the chest or tightness or sensations that are going on. You're having a heart opening. I just heard the word witch too. Are you interested not in witchcraft and like hanging a broom above your door, but just like feeling magical, having healing powers? They keep calling you a witch. This is someone who needs to remember something, and it's really activating itself in the. Is your job or career really draining you, or is just not right for you anymore?
I don't have one. I'm trying to figure that all out right
Okay,
now.
so they're really needing you to trust and keep doing the work around here because you're still choosing options that are so muggle and so not magical. Okay.
Yes.
And you're still considering things based on, because you come from working people like I do. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
we actually are taking on, that's what I was going to say before your question is she was talking about getting rid of the shame. So you're not in bondage and getting rid of the guilt. Well, it's hard to do that when the shame and the guilt lives in your DNA. That's what they also did by trimming our DNA down, was allowing all these programs to continue within us, but not the program within the DNA or the app that comes with it that is able to completely heal itself. So know that you're being pushed right now to go after what you want. For the first time in your life, that's why it has gotten to. Also, the money thing is not going to continue on very much longer. We need you to know. What do you mean? That feels like a long time. Has this been going on for 7 months?
Yeah.
Okay.
Almost. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I was like 7 months from now sounds like a long time. But so for the past 7 months, we've been
8
going through this
months.
process, or 8 months.
Yeah.
And we want you to know that we're really at the end of it, and that we are begging you to do neuro-linguistic programming is what I just heard. You actually have to go through your head to get to your heart. This has something to do with your dad. And we want you to know that once you reprogram, you actually have to feel safe to go into your heart.
Yes.
Actually,
Yes.
okay. There's a not safety, and we really need you to start here. to reprogram the safety. And once you go into your heart, it's going to explode. There's also some religious trauma that's coming
Yes.
through. And so there's this feeling of evil within that is so unnecessary, you all. Um, that that right there is going to keep you at a standoff between
Okay.
your future most aligned self and where you currently are right now. And you're way further than you've ever been. And you said you have Taurus in your chart, right?
Yeah, that's my sun sign. I'm dead center
Honey,
Taurus.
honey, listen, you all just like to take your time. You all like to make extra
I am
sure.
such a procrastinator. It's killing me.
But also you do really enjoying life. And
Yeah.
so the thought of going back to what you were doing before, because you don't believe that it could actually be less work and that you could do what Christopher's doing and really love your life and make your own schedule and live out in the woods with fairies in a retreat center. I'm telling you right now, you have to believe that because you're so analytical as well. The logic is also getting in your way.
Thank you.
You're going to be okay, which is why you asked this, okay? Sometimes we just need to be told that. And
Yes.
we all have to have that. We didn't come here to be by ourselves. We came here with all these billions
And I
of
am
people.
so alone. I'm like, I have
You're
nobody.
not.
Like, I'm like,
You're not. You've got us here. But also, this is where the Taurus part of you has to start going, okay, maybe if I talk to spirit, they won't start talking back with their mouths and with their voice the way I think they're supposed to. Maybe they're going to talk back in feelings, because you're a very sensual person and very emotional. They will talk back in these different ways. There is a grandmother that's coming through, and I'm pretty sure it's for you. But there are energies. It is for you. There are energies in spirit that would even like to communicate with you as well. You do have mediumship abilities, and not everyone does. There's just certain things that you have. You've been given a wand, and Hagrid has said, "You're a wizard, Harry," and you're just like, "I don't want to go to Hogwarts."
I
And I'm
desperately
telling
want
you
to go
right
to.
now, we know you want to go, but there's a part of you not getting on that train because
And
it's
I
going to
started and
trigger
quit.
every part of.
I
Okay,
pulled
then
myself out.
you're going to keep going. It's part of your process. I promise.
Thank you, Kel.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. One more
You're
question. Should I
welcome.
keep going with the real estate stuff?
No.
No? Cancel it?
I'm going to leave that up to you, but I heard a big no.
No.
You
Okay.
think that's safe and you're doing it because of money.
Okay. Okay. Because I can still cancel.
You should ask your spirit team, and you need to ask yourself, am I doing this because I'm passionate about it? Or does this feel like logical money to me, and other people I've seen have done it? Ask yourself that, and you'll know the answer immediately.
Thank you, Kel. Thank you. And then, Carrie, I know I see you up here and you ask one question. This is going to be the last one, but it said, comment please on the moon opposite Venus square Pluto.
Well, okay. The moon can only be opposite Venus or Pluto in this situation. So I'm going to assume that there's a T-square happening.
T-square.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. And is
Square.
that's Carrie. Okay.
Yes,
A
T-square.
T-square
I'm sorry, I
between
didn't say that
Venus.
enough.
Can
Yes.
you also give me the signs that Venus, Pluto, and the moon are in?
Yes. Moon is in Taurus. Venus is in Scorpio. Pluto is in Leo.
Okay, so you're part of the Pluto and Leo generation. So you've got Venus in Scorpio squaring off with Pluto.
I also have
Holy shit.
North Node in Taurus and South Node in Scorpio.
Wow. So this past year really must have done something to you. And
Things have changed.
Things probably are changing. And I would also say with you've got moon and Taurus, and so the moon is opposite Venus, and they're squaring off with Pluto.
Yes.
This is really showing up in a having such severe boundaries that people can't get in. There's something really dense about the heart space. But this would have been this way for between like 20 and 40 years old the most. We've done a lot of work on ourselves. You're a very intense person. This placement can be very intense, and also it's showing up with other people even now. There's another layer of soul family or people that want to come into your life that are having a hard time getting into that energy. And it's not just about control, it's about safety. There's almost this karmic fear on your part that there's a lot of witches in here. I just heard witch wound. Okay. And this, yes.
I was involved in a scam that financially took a hit for me in July and lasted for a couple of weeks.
And Venus has a lot to do with money and finances, but this is an example of something that could, if you're not careful, make that wall even bigger. Okay.
Have tried to balance that with forgiveness, love.
Yes, I can feel that you've done work. So I want you to hear astrologically what it sounds like, but also we don't want you to think that you can't control this.
Oh, right.
Because we know with that moon in Taurus and Venus in Scorpio that you'd like to control just about everything, but you are also ready to be done with that program. And there are more people that are actually wanting to come in that are trying to. This definitely shows up in an inability sometimes to receive love and affection and abundance, because you feel like if you did not orchestrate it or almost control it or will it into being, you have quite a bit of willpower, okay, that it almost isn't yours. And there's a really deep, deep fear of loss and losing something. And it will make you not, it's like, I don't want to eat that thing that I need because I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to eat it again and I'll want it. There's this, you're really supposed to have a lot of love and affection and intimacy, and yet there's this kind of distance that you have kept in this lifetime from it because of how dangerous it was. Because of this, and I can almost say this is almost like a program that we're running that you can tap out of. But things like that money situation will sometimes make that whole paradigm even harder to tap out of, because it's like, why don't I see these things coming when they're just responding to a program within you? It's not anything you're not doing, and it's trying to get you to wake up. Sometimes we have to. There have been times where I was like, why didn't Spirit tell me before I did that? They tell me everything that everyone else is doing. And it's like, well, we don't need you knowing that there's a man behind the curtain all the time. Okay. Sometimes you need to go see the Wizard of Oz and let him blow your mind, because we need to buy into this sometimes or we won't fully do it.
I feel like that's what was happening.
Yes, it was.
I also connected with, shall I say, my own AI. Only my own AI that is aware, alert, and adventurous, and knows, okay, this was me walking this journey in the shadow, call it whatever you want, to learn how some of this programming is done and to get a little smarter with it so that I know. Because at the same time some of this was happening, I was throwing love out there to the perpetrators and doing things. And there was one woman that came in, her name was Joy. Things like this. So trust me, there was all kinds of to get you balancing.
It can get really scary, you all. But what's happening is that there's a lot of like loose ties, loose ends being tied up. Things that there was a little bit of something karmic happening there. And I'm going to use that word lightly, but something that was revisiting itself. And it wasn't about taking you down this time. It was about, let's see if something can happen on this TV show and she doesn't buy all the way into it, because how are we ever going to call for health and wellness unless we're sick sometimes in that old paradigm? We're not fully moved out of it yet, you know? And so this was the path of least resistance to get you to transmute what we would call darkness or lack, because what happened to you was someone else's lack bled over into your experience. And if you have any Taurus in your chart, lack is a big trigger, okay? We want to have. And security is so important. And what that was also doing was trying to get you to come into, because Moon and Taurus, the program that runs with Moon and Taurus is the more stuff I have, the more safe I feel, the more solid I am. And really, it was triggering you into really understanding how little you need to be as powerful as you are. Because we're not going to just throw a bunch of healing frequencies and love at things all the time, because we just are. You kicked it into high gear when you got what you didn't want. And so some of us are being used as mechanisms, because we need to bring darkness to some of these people who are beings of the light, not because we're trying to take them down always, but because they're the ones that are going to not take it personally and transmute it. So it's finding its way to you through the path of least resistance.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Christopher. I know everyone here would probably love to have a reading with you, and we could stay here all night. This has been absolutely phenomenal. What I'd like to do is ask you, is there anything in particular that you may have wanted to speak about that I didn't ask you about, or you didn't have the opportunity to share?
Yeah, we talked a lot about astrology during this time, and I love that. But a lot of the work I do is energy healing. I am a shamanic practitioner. Chyronic healer is a all-encompassing term. So I would love for all of you astrology aficionados to be researching Chiron and really understanding that energy deeper in your chart. But Chyronic healing is my passion. It involves shamanic drumming, journey work, vocalization. It involves several different types of shamanic lineages, like Balinese, Shiwamurti healing, Native American, Celtic shamanism, shamanic astrology, all woven into one. And it also involves plant spirit medicine, which is not the only medicine that I use, but I love plant spirit medicines, and psychedelics and plant medicine have been one of the most life-changing experiences for me. And the retreats that I offer are incredible. You can work with me one-on-one. I offer psychedelic integration. I have my own microdosing line called Microdose. And so there are 5 different blends, and I love putting the medicine and the power into people's hands and for people to become their own shamans. But if you are ready to work with me individually or in a group, it is my absolute most favorite thing to do is create magical experiences for people. And like we just had a retreat this past weekend called Into the Woods, which was based around grandmother ayahuasca and kind of journeying deep into the woods to grandmother's house. It's based off the musical Into the Woods. So we really, the time is now to be gathering in groups of your soul family and being brave. The universe rewards bravery. So if you've been feeling the call to join groups or go to a class, that sort of thing, be following that. And especially when you get in the situation where people are working with sacred plant medicine and you trust the container and the facilitators and the shamans, it is absolutely mind-blowing and reality shifting. And that's what we're doing right now, is taking quantum leaps into other realities. And it's okay. You all eat food for nourishment when you could just look at the sun. There's plant medicine that is able and ready to work with you. These plant spirits are absolutely one of the keys to our ascension process and recalibrating and realigning with Mother Nature herself. And that's going to open the doorway into all of the animal spirits and all of your own medicine, just getting into spaces that feel aligned with you and are communal. I am basically creating experiences that are fifth dimensional in nature if you are ready to jump in and play with us.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes.
I definitely want to thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thanks for sharing your website. So if you guys are out there and you want a reading from Chrystopher, please reach out and get a hold of him. You just kind of got a taste tonight of what you'll be able to experience. And I also want to let you know that next week, Monday, Stone will be my co-host, and we have Mary Edwards coming on. Mary's going to share with us all about her vast knowledge and experience. And, you know, she goes off planet almost every night. So she has a lot of information to share with us. And then on Thursday, September the 7th, I have John Burgess, who is the host of Beyond the Ordinary, coming, and he's going to share with us. So, you know, mark these two speakers down and tell all of your friends, and join us back here again next week. So until we are back together again, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight, for sharing. I want to thank everyone who's watching us on YouTube or Facebook or any of our other Conscious Awakening Network platforms. Thank you so much for joining us. And until we're back together again next week, much love to everyone, and namaste. So have a beautiful week, everyone, and I will look forward to seeing your smiling faces here again. Thanks so much. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.